listening to the Match, Marry, Mate show, where we aim to be the #1 relationship education podcast for Black women and couples in the country, as I teach you how to get your love lives together. Here I guide you on your dating and relationship journey, empower you to honor yourself and own your truth, teach you how to navigate and negotiate your needs and desires with men. I'm your host, your girl, Joyce Robinson Myers, and welcome to another episode. I'm here with the 5th episode of season 4, titled Springing into Womanhood. I have 7 topics selected for you, intended to teach you about various stages in womanhood and ways of approaching singleness, relationships, and marriage. We're also focusing on the 4th energy center of the body, which is our heart, representing love for self and others, and awareness and insights for this episode. You're listening to episode number 26, Female Negotiation. Let's begin with the power of affirmation. We start every episode with an affirmation as a way to center self, listen to the body, and honor our spirit. Ask yourself, how are you today? What moods, feelings, or emotions come up? Use that energy to speak life, wholeness, and healing over yourself using the power of your own voice. Speak it into existence with an I or I love. I love my standards. I love feeling secured and covered. I love knowing what I want. Today's episode is inspired by an anonymous story shared with me that I've repurposed just a bit as a teaching story for us to learn more relationship education together. This show borrows from all the other episodes in this season to teach you how to approach negotiation with men. If you want to share a secret story with me, and that just means no one will ever know it was you, click the link in the show notes and I'll respond with an episode just like this one, giving you my advice and other relationship skills and tools. If you want to write into the show with a dating, relationship, or marriage story, or a question that you'd like me to respond to, please use the link in the show notes to submit it. Or you can email me at podcast@matchmarrymate.com. Also, if you want to book a one-on-one call with me and you're looking for a discounted option, I have one that may work. If you're willing for parts of your session to appear as an anonymous secret story on the Match, Marry, Mate podcast, you can book your call under Awareness plus Secret Story for over $100 off. Again, see the link in the show notes for more details. Now, I am earning my PhD, studying the science of love and social connection to place myself in the best position to support my community. Studies show, and I believe, that with proper relationship education, we can produce smarter, safer, and happier romantic decisions that improve the quality of our relationships as we match, marry, and mate. Because why, y'all? Black love matters, and we're in much need of some Black family restoration. Enjoy the show. Before I share, allow me to handle some simple housekeeping. I am going to read a story shared with me in my own voice, the way I imagine it would be told, and I've refitted it to the degree necessary for discretion and privacy. So, legal disclaimer here, since I'm reading a story, the purpose of my work is to assist Black women in making changes in their lives and love lives through supportive guidance and mentorship. I am not a licensed therapist, psychologist, medical doctor, or other healthcare professional. None of my work is clinical, and I am a dating and relationship educator and mentor, and my work is educational and relational. Here's today's story. Joyce, I am in a dating relationship, so we're not quite exclusive yet, but we're headed that way. We had a conversation about what we need to make that kind of commitment and transition. And I shared my standards in the major areas of life and relationship, like how you advise. It was a good talk. And we learned lots about each other. Most feeling positive about moving in the direction of a relationship. Then he wanted to revisit and expressed that he thought I was being too finicky, as if he had to jump through hurdles to get with me. He did not feel this way comprehensively, but just in certain areas. We both want the same thing, an exclusive relationship with each other. But I want my standards met and honored. And he wants to feel like it's not a Herculean effort to do so. Please help. Sis didn't even ask a question. She just was like, help, send help. I love it. Now, I really appreciate this kind of scenario or even plea for guidance. Relationship negotiation is a real thing, and it happens to be one of my personal superpowers. So especially when both parties ultimately want the same thing. In this case, exclusivity, right? And they just need assistance with the best comfortable way to arrive there together. I love that kind of work. So for the listeners, I have already verified this story and made sure that the woman in question is asking, whatever she's asking, she isn't being delusional or unreasonable in her standards and requirements. I have also ensured that the guy actually wants exclusivity with her. Now, I need to make sure that these are both true before we go through any negotiation work. And while we're here, let me also add that relationships are not hard, or they should not be hard. They will require work, and you will want to make sure that that work or that labor is worthwhile. Now, we can run into things as we enter negotiation, but in an effort to not create hard work, I like to make sure we're starting off light and easy. So I do inspect the reality of the situation and I make a decision from there. And so I've already decided that this has green lights, right? So here's what we need to start. We need a question, an offer, or a proposal. It's usually on the man's end. And what do you want to do with this woman? From the woman, I need a response. And do you even want what this man is asking, offering, or proposing? Now, both of these checked out again. So what they think it is what it is. And so, yay, we're all in reality here. Now, next, I'm on the man's end. What does your commitment look like? How will it benefit her? What will it cost you? Do you want to pay that? On the woman's side, what does your commitment look like? How will it benefit him? What will it cost you? Do you want to pay that? Now, since he's asking, to what degree can he cover the risk or sacrifice that would set this woman back in the event that it does not work out or he departs prematurely? It was in this conversation that things went very well. But later, he said she was being a little too finicky in certain areas. Now, in my experience in working with couples, a lot of things could be happening, but it's usually these main three. One, there's a level of ignorance that the man has about female life, the risks, the costs, the sacrifices that come with various activities with men. Two, there's some negative or hesitant. And when I say negative, I don't mean that he's being nasty, but some negative or hesitant reaction to her standards at that level. Now, usually this is where men assess if the juice is worth the squeeze, because honestly, there are women who will give him more for less. And that's just what it is. So he has a conscious choice of if he wants to gain female access in another way, in an easier way. And this is where it gets real, because you learn how he really sees you. And it may not be the picture you want to see, but it's worthwhile to see it in this moment. And number three, there's some type of negative or hesitant reaction to the way he have to either come up or shift in order to be with her. Now, this is less about the woman at this point and more about him, but it does reveal the parts of his character that can only be examined under a commitment. And we do change here to a degree. So, it's good to see. Now, let me share examples. So that first was female life. I'm going to use sex because it's easy. And then later I'll use pregnancy because it's easy. So let's say a man wants to sleep with you and you want to sleep with him too. So again, we have some mutuality. Should anything outside of a good old time happen from that moment, who is going to bear more burden? The woman. Whether it's embarrassment, shame, infection, disease, pregnancy, what have you, it's more likely to be her reality. Now, male life is set up in a way where they can deposit and have the freedom to walk away and be as removed or as present as they want to be. Intellectually, men may understand this, but something about explaining it real time on the heels of their ask, request, proposal lands differently. Now, I don't think a woman needs to overextend herself or over-explain anything here, but there is benefit to naming the exact potential risks or burdens for herself by involving herself with said man and having a conversation about it. No, he won't just know. You're going to have to open your mouth, speak up, and advocate for yourself. And this is also the perfect conversation to make your intentions known. Listen, I'm not trying to get pregnant. So if that happens, then what? You work to get to the same page. But you should also state what you're prepared to do in the event that he dishonors his word. This is one of the riskiest parts of dealing with the man, right? If you only operate on his word, and to a degree, sometimes that is a part of it. But if you only operate that way, well, your reality will only be as good as he promised it to you. And who knows how good that word is. And this is why your standards, your boundaries, your coverage exist. So ladies, you need to know two things right here. There are a number of women who are okay with this. They either only take men at their word and let that create reality for them, desired or undesired, and they'll have to react real time when necessary, or they take advantage of this idea and try to extort all that they can out of a man. The first is ignorant. I do not recommend. The former is nasty. I do not recommend. Both leave men with bitter taste in their mouth about women. So now, back to the example. Number 2, a negative or hesitant reaction to her standards at that level. So I want to use a scene from my own life here. There was a man. No, seriously. A man wanted me to move in with him. At the time, I had 2 leading standards. I don't move into bachelor's pads. So we're not just going to move into your place, or I'm not just going to move into your place. And this man at the time made more money than me. So I'm like, we can't choose a place outside of what I could afford in my own financial range. But if you want to do that anyways, then to what degree will you be able to comp that for me should something happen to him? Because I do not want to be left with rent and bills outside of my budget. Now, this scenario has happened to me twice in my adult life. And in both cases, the men honored my standard for what they asked me to do at that level. Now, there are a number of blessings and burdens at bay when you move in together with anybody, and particularly a man. So it's not his job to cover every single burden for you. You got to pay to play, so to speak. You do have to be an adult and take chances and leaps that are attached to adult life and decision making. But I expect any man to cover to the degree that it could be a loss by what he's asking for me. But I am also ready to do the same for him on the other side, right? The kinds of coverage and protection, they just look different. But had these men responded negatively or hesitantly, I would have explained to him the rationale behind my standards and then assessed it from there. And in fact, the second time I did have to go into a little bit more detail, but not much. So I am sure we all know a few men whose positions would be no, or that they just wouldn't want to be able to provide that level of security. And fine, you wouldn't be for me. And then 3, a negative or hesitant reaction to the ways he'd have to come up or shift. So a common phrase that I hear, and I'm mostly dealing with Black couples, is, well, I got to do all that, or I ain't got to do all that. So again, I verified that these standards are not unreasonable. So what we're actually dealing with here is if a man wants to meet them or not, or if he can, despite his willingness. For example, I have a client and she's dating this man long distance. And he chose to date women, and so now her, in a city that he plans to move to within the next 6 months. Now, she's designed her dating life in a certain way. She's only open to dating men long distance for a certain season, meaning she's dating men in cities that she did not mind relocating to, or dating men who had her city on their short list to move to, or men who are already in a city. Well, one of her long distance suitors, a man planning to move to her city soon, asked to be exclusive. She certainly wants a relationship with him, but she prefers him to be in the city before she commits to an exclusive relationship with him. Now, it was obvious that he was expecting her to just say yes, as is, and probably because that's been his experience with women. Men are socialized that way often, but she didn't. So not only is he having to recalibrate for her giving him an unexpected answer, he is having to manage his feelings with being told no, at least in a way, different than he imagined it. So her position puts his intentions on exposure, as it should. And he has to decide what he wants to do with that. And this is where the questions like, why I got to do all of that, usually enter the conversation. And, my response, guy, but sir, if you were planning on relocating anyway, and you were intentional about dating women in the city that you wanted to relocate to, and you found a woman who you want to be in a relationship with, and she lives there, what's the problem arriving there first? She doesn't want to cut off all her access available options without her person being in the same city as her. So if you were really serious about that relocation, and that's a decision that he's made outside of her, and you're really serious about being exclusive with her, what's the issue? Love bugs, let's take a quick break. If you're enjoying this show and would like to keep the podcast in production, consider making a donation. Thank you, and see you soon. To return to today's story, all three of these issues are playing out. But I want to address the level of position you want to hold and what I've titled female negotiation. When I'm working with clients, I ask the man to think about the woman in question as his daughter or sister. What do you know about male nature and male society that you would want to protect her from? And usually he starts listing out those things. And then it starts to dawn on him that those are the same issues his partner and her community are thinking about protecting her from in regard to him too. And I love when I see this click, right? I love when it happens because it lets me know our work is getting ready to be even lighter. Now, he needs protection and safety too. This is not a one-sided exchange, but we're starting with him because he's the one asking, and I am intentionally centering the woman in this particular show. Generally speaking, women also stand to risk more harm. Not always, but it's way more common for sure. Now, sometimes I explain that this woman has a right to view herself as somebody's daughter, right? A man doesn't get to take that away from you. She comes from a home, a family, and parents who have taught her, guided her, and want to see her operate with a certain level of instruction and guidance that they have poured into her. So if you watched Clay and AD's relationship on Love is Blind, there's a scene where AD and her mother are having a little relationship talk about Clay. And I personally believe that she should have offered some different counsel or maybe just added a little bit more to it. But my point in bringing it up is that her mother charged her with this same energy, right? She's like, listen, I raised you this way. She's leaning on the effort that she put into rearing her up. and how she trusts her to make good decisions and the woman who she raised her to be. I could not speak for another group, but in the Black community, this is very real, especially for Black daughters and the men who they choose. Many times we just have a desire to not look stupid or ashamed, especially to our own family and friends. Some of this is cultural, but it's also an understanding that your parents or other family teachings and insights have been important to you, and it does bring a level of shame to have to face them again, acting like you have not been taught or even warned with the very trouble that you find yourself in. So I know for me, when I have had to navigate with men, I am the first to be like, listen, I'm not going home pregnant with no support from you. My mother made it clear that I was free to do whatever I wanted to do as an adult, but that she did not want to be placed in a position where she had to raise me or my baby, or where she'd have to support me or my baby. Now, I know my mother. If I found myself in a pickle, would she help me anyway? Yes. But I don't operate in a way that takes advantage of her love for me or her support for me. I operate in a way that respects her wishes as it is connected to me. Now, I respect that a woman having raised her own children would not also want to feel obligated to raise mine or help me raise mine, because I respect that. I would just be too embarrassed to have to tell my mother, I got pregnant and I'm coming home. I'm going to need your help. It has caused me to navigate with men differently because I have standard operating procedures around sex to put me in a position to have to never make that call to my mother. So yes, I have standards because I am Marie's daughter. And I have no intention of embarrassing myself or shaming my mother where I can help it. And I haven't even mentioned my father, right? Which would be a whole other feat. I don't want to have to tell my father that I'm out here choosing men that cannot pick up where he left off. Just no. So when I flip that scenario and say, wouldn't you want your daughters to have this same kind of pride? It starts to sink in for them even more. The kind of man who's still fighting you at this point, I'm not even sure it's worth continuing having the conversation. He can have questions, and I don't even mind a little countering on his end or, some equity for self-protection. Like, I get all of that. But fighting would just be a no-go for me. Now, in working with couples, the women are usually willing to lean into what the man is asking. So this is not typically a matter of defiance or even resistance. The man already has half of a yes just in her willingness. So I really be like, come on now, sir. She's simply saying that she does not want to have damage beyond repair or a degree of ruin that would be unjustified. So in fact, someone sharing their standards is already some form of willingness. If it were a complete rejection, you would just get a no. Conversation wouldn't even be happening. Now, both parties risk some degree of loss or sacrifice in joining together, and that's just the cost of doing relationship business. Now, I'm not expecting, again, for either partner to fully cover all of that. You can't. You got to pay to play again. But the extra costs, especially the ones that are inherent to being a woman, well, that has to be discussed and negotiated and agreed upon. Now, if I'm talking to a man, considering the extra cost, the question, why would you want to put her in that position? There is a security and safety exchange that happens here that we will unpack later. I'm sure in the bonus episode, when I sit down with my husband, we will do that. But I want to bring up trust right here. So lots of times men say, I want to know that you trust me, or why can't you just trust me? First, trust operates differently inside of a commitment versus outside. But since this show is focused on negotiation at the point of relationship taking place, I am going to speak to it from the outside because it hasn't happened yet. So first, trust is earned, not just given. And yes, there's a degree of trust that we're always kind of operating on just to interact with other people. But outside of that, it's earned. And I like to have men really evaluate if what they are asking for has also been earned in trust to the degree of risk or cost. Ooh, child, this is where it gets even more real. Because that willingness that I spoke about earlier is a degree of trust. So, sir, come on now, help me help you. And that's probably all the trust you're going to get until you demonstrate a reason for more. And so in these cases, many, many times, the woman is saying, I want to have sex with you. I want to be exclusive with you, or whatever the case may be. But I want this part secured or covered before I do so. Second, if I didn't trust you, this conversation wouldn't even be happening at all. Again, the woman would just shut it down. So as a woman, I understand that when I engage with a man, there is some level of risk, and I own that as an adult. That's not an attack on men, and it's not an attack on the man in question. It's just the nature of male-female interaction. So I do tell my ladies, you got to deal with that. Now, I'm going to return to pregnancy for an example, because again, it just lands better and most people can grasp it within their understanding. Now, I can secure certain assets for myself or any child in the event that I get pregnant in advance. It's a degree of security that I can ask a man for and that he can provide should he impregnate me. That part isn't really that difficult. What he cannot cover and what no one can, these are my personal risks just by being a woman, is my life, because I could die in childbirth, or my health, because being pregnant or being in active labor could cause some permanent damage to my body, or my beauty, even if it is just my vanity. So what? It's my body. Because it's not going to look the same after you have a kid in most cases. Or my postpartum, because it takes 2 years minimum to just feel normal and back to yourself. And that doesn't include any other postpartum side effects like losing my hair or the weakening of my eyesight. And so even if the money comes in to help pay for this child, I cannot ensure that you will always be around to give our children what they need for you as a father. And I have to consider raising and supporting this child alone or under a different arrangement that I would want or maybe even intended from the onset. I have to think about that as a woman. It could be a real reality for me. So when you ask a woman about just trusting you, oh, she does if she's willing to sleep with you, knowing that pregnancy could be an outcome, especially if she's not the type to have an abortion. But I mean, even if she does decide to have an abortion, a man could cover the cost of the procedure for sure. But is there anything that she can do to secure his emotional availability, his presence during the procedure, his care during post-op? Throughout her lifetime, when she feels sad that she couldn't have the baby, or she sees another child and does the mental math on how old her child would have been, can she call for you for emotional and psychological support in those moments and have you respond to her like a father of the child that she's grieving? Even if you answered yes, there's no way for her to gain security from you that you would. So yes, she's likely to want the security that you can offer up front. And she knows she has to be prepared for all these other risks on her own. You could come through, but she has no way of knowing that, no way to enforce it. So as long as you've demonstrated and secured what you can, she's in a position to trust you with other more riskier things. Now, ladies, I hope you can see why it's important for you to know what you want. Stop expecting men to just know it or letting life happen to you before you develop any sense of standards, boundaries, negotiations. But also be okay with what you want. It will repel some men for sure. You'll have to get used to that. But it will also make sure that only the kinds of men you want to entertain are present with you. For the guy in this secret story who said he doesn't want to feel like it's a Herculean effort. Well, once you deem her standards as reasonable, And then you need to ask yourself, why do you think some of the things that is unreasonable are unreasonable? Then it's really just a matter of where you are and where she's calling you to be. Now, if that distance is too great for you, then just say that. Now, ladies, many, many times they do, and you're not listening or accepting that. So to circle back to Love is Blind with AD and Clay, he told her countless times that he was not that guy, but she was so hell-bent on getting to that altar that she ignored it. Now, sometimes this reveals that you're asking for things not quite on your level, fellas. Or be honest and just tell her that it is outside of your scope, and y'all can try to figure it out from there. But if you both want each other, she has the right to say, I want to be covered in this way. And you have a responsibility to demonstrate the character and quality to have what it is that you want, whatever you're asking her for. Now, if negotiation can lead to agreement with an intact relationship, I am here for it. It's what I do. Have your listening ears on, ask good questions, and make an effort to land in the same place together. But if that's not working, if he's unwilling, detached, undeveloped, or just not ready or mature enough, let that be so without trying to fix it or fix him or ignoring the red flags waving so strongly in your face just to have a pretty wedding or the license by which to call someone your man or your husband. Now, this does work in reverse too. And I'm sure, again, my husband and I will hit it in our bonus episode. But today I wanted to center the female side. So that's where I will leave it. That's it. And that's all. We end every episode with thoughts or heart-provoking questions for your journal. Journaling is simply prayers on paper, and the Most High tends to those too. Dear listener, how would you rate your negotiation skills? What's the best way for you to protect yourself and offer a quality experience or relationship to a man? As you reflect on your dating history, can you point out some areas where you undervalue yourself or any risks you could have or did incur? What have you learned? Are you able to leave a connection or relationship if it's not who or what you truly want? It's okay to write about the blessings and the burdens. Pour it out into your journal today. Release yourself, free yourself, and most of all, be yourself. P.S. No woman is better at being you than you. If you're interested in my research projects, my coaching work, or want me to speak about either at your next event, you can reach me at hello@matchmarymade.com. I hope you have some good food for thought after today's show. If you also want to share some topics you'd like to hear, please use the comments feature on this episode or shoot me an email at podcast@matchmarymade.com. Today, I leave you with this quote from Shaka Khan. You've just got to follow your own path. You have to trust your heart, and you have to listen to the warnings. Thank you for joining me today and tuning into another episode of the Match Mary Made Show. Until our next time together, love, light, and relationship. Remember, we grow as we go, and I'll be with you in the next episode. Cheers.